My brother sprayed perfume into my son's eyes. My parents laughed, at least he smells better now. The scent hit me before the scream. I was washing dishes in the narrow kitchen of my parents' ranch house in Bakersfield, my hands shaking from exhaustion after watching my baby nephew all afternoon while everyone else lounged in the living room. My 8-year-old son, Tommy, had been sitting quietly in the corner with his Spider-Man coloring book. He wasn't making noise. He never did. Tommy had learned early that being invisible meant being safe in this house. Then came the piercing wail that made my blood freeze. Mom. Mommy, my eyes burn. The ceramic plate slipped from my soapy hands, exploding against the linoleum floor. I bolted toward the sound, my heart hammering against my ribcage. Tommy was curled on the hallway carpet, his small hands pressed desperately against his face, tears, and something else, something that made my stomach lurch, streaming between his fingers. What happened? Tommy, baby, look at me. I dropped to my knees beside him, but he couldn't open his eyes. Wouldn't. The skin around them was already turning an angry red. Oh, relax, MA. The voice behind me was maddeningly calm. My younger brother Derek stood in the doorway, still holding his girlfriend's expensive Chanel No. 5, the bottle I'd watched him obsess over for weeks because Brittany had left it here. His sandy hair was perfectly styled, his designer jeans spotless, his expression utterly unbothered. He was staring at me funny, Derek said with a shrug, like he was explaining why he'd swatted a fly. Kid gives me the creeps with those weird eyes of his. Figured I'd teach him some manners about personal space. Are you completely insane? The words tore from my throat as I lunged for the perfume bottle, ripping it from his hands and hurling it across the hallway. It shattered against the wood paneling, filling the air with that sickly sweet floral scent that would haunt my nightmares for years. Tommy's screams were getting hoarser. I was dabbing at his face with the edge of my shirt when I heard it, laughter bubbling up from the living room behind me. Well, at least the little weirdo smells better now. My mother's voice carried that familiar note of cruel amusement as she called out to my father. Honey, come see this. Derek finally did something about Tommy's staring problem. Dad didn't even glance up from his Lakers game. Should have taught the boy not to gawk at people, he grunted, popping another Bud Light. Boys like him always turn out perverted if you don't nip it in the bud. Something inside my chest cracked clean in half. I scooped Tommy into my arms, his small body trembling against mine as I carried him to the bathroom and locked the door. For the next hour, I flushed his eyes with lukewarm water from the tap. His screams gradually fading to broken sobs, then to exhausted whimpers, and finally to a silence that was somehow worse than the crying. He fell asleep curled in my lap on the cold bathroom tiles. I stayed there all night, stroking his hair and making promises I wasn't sure I could keep. By morning, everything would change. The pounding on the bathroom door started at 7 a.m. sharp. Quit being such a drama queen and get out here. Derek's voice carried that same casual irritation he'd used yesterday, like Tommy's agony was just an inconvenience. Mom made pancakes, and you're embarrassing the family with this whole victim act. I looked down at my son, still pale and quiet in my arms, his eyes puffy and red-rimmed but thankfully clear. The sight of him trying so hard to be brave, just 8 years old and already apologizing for existing, made my decision crystal clear. We're leaving, I whispered against his hair. MIA. Now it was Mom's voice, sharp with that familiar edge of authority she'd wielded over me for 28 years. You open this door right now before you flood my bathroom floor with your tears. Lord knows you always were the sensitive one. No wonder Derek turned out tougher. I opened the door and pushed past them both, Tommy clinging to my hand. Where do you think you're going? Mom blocked the hallway, her purple bathrobe cinched tight around her thick waist, coffee mug in hand like this was just another Tuesday morning. You've got rent due next week, and we feed that boy practically for free. That boy has a name. It's Tommy. He's a burden, she snapped, her eyes cold as February rain. And you know it. I looked toward the living room where Dad sat in his leather recliner, remote in one hand, completely absorbed in Sports Center highlights. He'd heard every word but wouldn't meet my eyes. Wouldn't acknowledge that his grandson had been assaulted in his own home while he watched TV 15 feet away. We left anyway. No car, no plan, just a mother's rage and a duffel bag stuffed with Tommy's clothes and my work uniforms. I walked him 3 miles to Mercy General's urgent care clinic, my feet blistering in my old Nikes, but I didn't care. Every step away from that house felt like breathing again. The triage nurse took one look at Tommy's swollen eyes and immediately called for a doctor. "What happened to him, honey?" "He was attacked." The words felt strange in my mouth, too simple for something so monstrous. "Attacked? By who?" I met her concerned gaze steadily. "Family." That was the first time I'd said it out loud, and the weight of that truth nearly knocked me over. Dr. Rodriguez was gentle but thorough, explaining that Tommy had suffered chemical burns to his corneas, painful but thankfully not permanent. The antibiotic drops would cost $43. I handed over my last crumpled bills without hesitation. That night, we slept on an air mattress in my coworker Linda's garage in Fresno. It smelled like motor oil and old newspapers, but Tommy whispered that it felt safer than anywhere we'd ever lived. "Is the mean man coming back?" he asked in the darkness. "No, baby. We're never going back there." But even as I said it, I knew this was just the beginning. The Sunrise Diner on Highway 99 became our salvation and my prison all at once. For 6 weeks, I worked doubles, breakfast shift starting at 5 a.m., dinner shift ending at midnight. Linda let us stay in her garage for $50 a week, and I cleaned her house on Sundays to make up the difference. Tommy started 2nd grade at Roosevelt Elementary, where the teachers asked gentle questions about his flinching and I learned to smile while deflecting. He's been through some changes, I'd say, which was true enough. My hands were raw from washing dishes and scrubbing floors, but watching Tommy slowly come back to life made every burning cut worth it. He started drawing again, superheroes mostly, though I noticed many of them wore eye patches or had one eye closed. When I asked about it, he just shrugged. "They're still heroes, even when they're hurt," he said matter-of-factly. My family's silence was deafening. No calls, no texts, nothing. Derek posted Instagram stories from bars in downtown Bakersfield, living it up like nothing had happened. Mom shared memes about family loyalty and forgiveness that made my stomach turn. Dad didn't have social media, but I knew he was still in that recliner, remote in hand, acting like we'd never existed at all. Then one evening, as I was counting tips at the end of my shift, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Saw you're playing the victim card pretty hard these days. Cute. Guess being a single mom is trendy now or whatever. Derek." He'd gotten a new phone number just to harass me. I stared at those words until they blurred, feeling that familiar rage building in my chest like a storm. But instead of responding, instead of engaging with his poison, I did something that surprised even me. I blocked the number. Then I opened my laptop in the diner's back office and started researching. Childhood trauma. PTSD in children. Chemical assault. Legal definitions. Support resources. I read until my eyes burned, taking notes on napkins and the backs of receipts. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet. I was looking for understanding. For weapons made of knowledge instead of fury. The night manager, Rosa, found me there at 2 a.m., surrounded by printed articles and legal websites. "Mija, you need to go home," she said gently. "Get some sleep." "This is about my son," I said, not looking up from an article about civil suits and criminal charges. "I need to know what they did to him. The exact legal terminology. The long-term effects. Everything." Rosa sat down across from me, her weathered hands folding over mine. "You planning to fight them?" I met her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something besides exhaustion and fear. I felt purpose. I'm planning to win. 2 weeks later, I enrolled in night classes at Fresno City College. Psychology 101. Introduction to Social Work. Child Development. Tommy would do homework at Linda's kitchen table while I studied in the garage, both of us building something new from the rubble of what we'd lost. The real battle was just beginning. 2 years later, everything changed on a Tuesday morning in March. I was dropping Tommy off at Lincoln Elementary. We'd moved to a better school district by then, thanks to my new job as a victim advocate with the Fresno County Children's Services. Tommy was thriving, making friends, even joining the school's art club. The shy, traumatized boy who'd hidden in corners was becoming confident, creative, outspoken. "See you tonight, Mom," he said, giving me a quick hug before running toward his best friend Carlos, who was waiting by the monkey bars. My phone buzzed as I walked back to my Honda Civic. A Facebook message from someone named Brittany Chen, Derek's ex-girlfriend, the one whose Chanel perfume had become a weapon. "Hey MA, I hope you remember me. I know this is random, but I've been thinking about what happened to Tommy for 2 years now. Derek told me you guys were being dramatic, but I recently started working with kids who've experienced trauma, and I realize now how seriously messed up that whole situation was. I have some videos on my phone from that day. Derek was bragging about teaching your brat a lesson and recording himself. I kept them because honestly, even then, something felt really wrong about it. If you want them, let me know. You deserve to know the truth about what kind of person he really is. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type back, yes. Send everything. The videos arrived within an hour. 3 clips, each more damning than the last. The first showed Derek laughing as he recounted the incident to Brittany, complete with a reenactment using her perfume bottle. Little freak was just sitting there staring at me like some kind of psycho, he said, grinning at the camera. So I gave him something to really cry about. The second was filmed right after it happened. Derek had recorded Tommy's screams from the hallway, zooming in on his agonized face while providing commentary like it was a comedy show. And that's how you handle creepy kids, he announced to his phone screen. The third video was the worst. It showed our parents laughing in the background while Tommy writhed on the floor, Mom actually applauding Derek's quick thinking and Dad suggesting they should have done something like this years ago. I sat in my car in the school parking lot and sobbed, not from sadness, but from pure, crystalline rage. For 2 years, I'd been building myself up, getting educated, becoming stronger. Now I had everything I needed. That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls. First, to Detective Martinez at the Fresno Police Department. I'd like to report a criminal assault on a minor. Second, to Laura Chen, the civil rights attorney I'd met through my advocacy work. I need to discuss a case involving chemical assault and child endangerment. Third, to my supervisor at Children's Services. I need to file a formal report about my son's case. I have video evidence. By Friday, Derek had been arrested on charges of assault with a chemical agent and child endangerment. My parents were named as accessories after the fact for their failure to seek medical attention and their encouragement of the attack. The war I'd been preparing for had finally begun. The arrest made the local news. Bakersfield man charged with chemical assault on child ran on KGET 17's evening broadcast, complete with Derek's mugshot and a brief description of the charges. I watched it from my living room couch with Tommy beside me, both of us eating bowls of Lucky Charms for dinner. Is that Uncle Derek? Tommy asked, though he hadn't called Derek uncle since that terrible day. Yes, baby. He's in trouble now. The kind of trouble that means he can't hurt anyone else. The phone started ringing within hours. First my mother, her voice shrill with panic. How could you do this to your own brother? He made one little mistake years ago. I hung up. Then Derek himself, calling from jail. I let it go to voicemail and listened later. You crazy witch, you're destroying our family over nothing. Tommy's fine, isn't he? God, you always were so dramatic. Just wait until I get out. I saved the recording and forwarded it to Detective Martinez as evidence of witness intimidation. But the real satisfaction came when the videos went viral. Someone, I never found out who, had leaked Derek's recordings to social media. Within 48 hours, #Justice4Tommy was trending locally, and the story had been picked up by news outlets across California. The comments section was brutal. Imagine torturing a child and thinking it's funny. This is what monsters look like. That poor little boy. I hope they throw the book at this psychopath. Derek's construction job fired him immediately. His new girlfriend dumped him via text. His landlord served him an eviction notice. The internet had spoken, and its judgment was swift and merciless. My parents tried a different approach. Dad showed up at the diner where I'd once worked, sliding into a corner booth like old times. Rosa, who was now the manager, recognized him immediately. You've got some nerve showing up here, she told him, arms crossed. That's the man whose daughter you failed to protect. Dad ignored her, focusing on me as I approached with a pot of coffee. This has gone far enough, Amie. Drop the charges and we can all move on. I filled his cup slowly, deliberately. Move on? Like you moved on when your grandson was screaming in pain on your living room floor. That was an accident. Boys roughhouse sometimes. Derek sprayed industrial-strength perfume directly into Tommy's eyes while he was sitting quietly with a coloring book. Then you all laughed about it. I set the coffee pot down with a sharp clink. That wasn't roughhousing, Dad. That was torture. He shifted uncomfortably. You're being dramatic. The boy turned out fine. No thanks to you. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo from Tommy's last therapy session, a drawing he'd made of our new life. 2 figures standing in front of a small house, both smiling, both safe. He's fine because I got him away from all of you. Dad left a $5 bill on the table and walked out without another word. The preliminary hearing was set for June. Derek's lawyer was already floating plea deal options, but I wasn't interested in bargains. I wanted justice. And for the first time in my life, I was going to get it. The call came on a rainy Thursday in May, just 3 weeks before Derek's trial was set to begin. Is this M.A. Richardson? The voice was crisp, professional. This is Robert Sterling from Sterling, Hayes and Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of Dorothy Richardson, your paternal grandmother. I nearly dropped the phone. Grandma had died 8 months earlier, and I hadn't even known until I saw the obituary in the Bakersfield Californian weeks later. My parents had made sure I wasn't invited to the funeral, cutting me out completely in their typical fashion. I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Sterling continued. I know this is unexpected, but I need to inform you that you've been named in Mrs. Richardson's will. Could you come to my office to discuss the details? The law office was downtown Bakersfield, all dark wood and leather chairs that smelled like money and old secrets. Mr. Sterling was younger than his voice suggested, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Your grandmother came to see me about 6 months before she passed, he explained, spreading documents across his mahogany desk. She was very specific about her intentions. She'd heard about what happened to your son through some mutual acquaintances, and she was horrified. My throat felt tight. She knew about Tommy. She knew everything. She also knew that your parents had disowned you for seeking justice. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name written, in Grandma Dot's familiar handwriting. She asked me to give you this. Inside was a single sheet of lavender stationery. Dearest I'm sorry I waited so long to reach out. I was scared of your parents, if I'm being honest. They've always been bullies, but I was too old and too tired to fight them. When I heard what Derek did to little Tommy, and how your mother and father reacted, I knew I had to do something. You remind me of myself at your age, strong, protective, unwilling to let evil win. The house on Maple Street is yours now, along with everything else. It's not much, but it's a start. Keep fighting, sweetheart. Some battles are worth everything. All my love, Grandma Dot. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. The estate includes the family home, approximately $180,000 in savings and investments, and her 1995 Bic LeSabre. Everything goes to you, with the house held in trust for Tommy until he turns 18. I stared at him, speechless. Grandma Dot's house, the place where I'd spent countless summer afternoons learning to bake cookies and listening to her stories about standing up to bullies, was ours. There's one more thing, Mr. Sterling added. Your parents have been living in the house since your grandmother's death, assuming they would inherit. They're going to need to vacate within 30 days. The irony was almost too perfect. The same people who'd called Tommy a burden, who'd laughed at his pain and kicked us out of their home, were now homeless themselves. Karma had a sense of humor after all. That evening, I drove past the house on Maple Street, my house now, and saw Mom's car in the driveway. The lights were on in the kitchen where Grandma used to make her famous apple pie. Soon, Tommy and I would be making new memories there. Derek's sentencing hearing was held on a blazing hot Tuesday in August. The courtroom was packed, reporters, child advocates, and members of the community who'd followed our story. Tommy sat beside me in the front row, wearing his best polo shirt and looking remarkably composed for a 10-year-old about to face his attacker in court. Judge Harrison was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, who'd seen every kind of family dysfunction imaginable. Derek's lawyer had spent months trying to downplay the incident as a momentary lapse in judgment and sibling rivalry gone too far, but the evidence was overwhelming. Mr. Richardson, Judge Harrison said, looking directly at Derek as he stood at the defendant's table, you deliberately sprayed a chemical agent into the eyes of an 8-year-old child, then recorded his suffering for your own entertainment. Your own family members testified that they heard you laughing about it afterward. Derek's shoulders slumped. Gone was the cocky swagger I remembered. Jail had worn him down to something smaller, more pathetic. This court sentences you to 2 years in state prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You are also ordered to pay $15,000 in restitution for medical expenses and therapy costs, and you are permanently barred from any contact with the victim or his family. The gavel came down with finality. Derek was led away in handcuffs without looking back. My parents hadn't attended the sentencing. They'd moved to a rundown apartment complex across town after being evicted from Grandma Dot's house, and according to local gossip, they'd stopped speaking to most of their friends and extended family. The shame had isolated them completely. 3 months later, Tommy and I officially moved into the house on Maple Street. We painted his new bedroom blue, his favorite color, and hung his superhero drawings on the walls. The garage became my home office where I worked on my master's degree in social work, determined to help other families navigate the system I'd learned to conquer. One evening, as we were making dinner together in Grandma Dot's sunny kitchen, Tommy looked up from the salad he was tossing. "Mom, do you think they'll ever say sorry?" I considered the question seriously. "I don't know, baby. Sometimes people can't admit when they're wrong, even when the whole world can see it." "That's okay," he said, surprising me with his wisdom. "We don't need their sorry. We have our own life now." He was right. We'd built something beautiful from the ashes of that terrible day, a life filled with safety, respect, and genuine love. Tommy was thriving in his new school, making friends easily, no longer flinching when people laughed or raised their voices. I'd found my calling as an advocate for children who couldn't protect themselves. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't making them suffer. It was living so well that their absence became a gift instead of a loss. That night, as I tucked Tommy into his bed in our safe, happy home, he smiled up at me sleepily. "You really are a superhero, Mom." And finally, I believed him.